China has just reacted to a project in the Philippines that, on paper, has nothing to do with missiles, warships, or military bases. On August 13, the U.S. Embassy in Manila announced a new community reporting center in Puerto Princesa, Palawan, designed to help Filipino fishermen report illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, and other suspicious maritime activity.
The United States Embassy in Manila and the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development have launched a community reporting center to combat illegal fishing in the West Philippine Sea, drawing warnings from Beijing that such cooperation must not target third parties.
The center uses Starlink connectivity and Earth Ranger software to transmit information to Philippine authorities. 5 days later, on August 18, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian warned that U.S. Philippine cooperation should not target third parties or harm their interests.
我们注意到了有关报道，将密切关注有关情况。我们不反对美菲开展正常合作，但有关合作不应针对第三方或损害第三方的利益。
So why did Beijing react to a project officially designed to help fishermen? Because the interesting part is not the building, it is the information. A fisherman sees something at sea, reports it through the new system, the information reaches Philippine authorities, and that report can potentially be compared with other maritime data before Manila decides what to do. On its own, that sounds like ordinary fisheries enforcement. But this center is being established in Palawan, on the Philippines' western frontier facing the South China Sea, in a region where Manila and Washington have already spent years improving maritime surveillance, information sharing, and security cooperation. And that creates the real question driving this story. Is this simply a new way to protect Filipino fishermen? Or is it another piece of a much larger Philippine maritime awareness network that China increasingly sees as strategically important? The new community illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing reporting center was established through the U.S.-backed Fish Right Project in partnership with the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. Its stated purpose is straightforward. Fishermen can report suspected illegal fishing and other unusual or unlawful maritime activity, with the information then passed to relevant Philippine authorities. There is nothing inherently military about that mission. But Palawan is not an ordinary location. Puerto Princesa is home to the Philippine military's Western Command, or WESCOM, which oversees Philippine operations in western maritime areas, while Antonio Bautista Air Base in Palawan is one of the Philippines' locations under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement with the United States. That means the new reporting center has appeared inside a much larger maritime security environment that has been developing for years. And this distinction is extremely important. The Fisheries Reporting Center is not the same facility as the military C2 Fusion Center in Palawan. There is no evidence in the material available that the new center is secretly a military installation, and it would be wrong to describe it that way. The significance comes from something more subtle. It is being added to a place where Philippine and allied maritime capabilities are already becoming more connected. And when you connect another source of information to an existing network, the value may come not from the individual source, but from what the entire network can eventually see.
The U.S. Defense Secretary is in the country for a scheduled meeting with his counterparts to discuss the Philippines and the U.S.'s shared vision in maintaining peace and stability in the Asia-Pacific region.
In November 2024, then U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin visited Antonio Bautista Air Base and WESCOM, where he and Philippine officials also visited a bilateral C2 fusion center and observed a U.S. provided unmanned surface vessel intended to improve Philippine intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, and maritime domain awareness. Palawan has also hosted multilateral maritime activities involving Philippine, U.S., and French forces, while Australia and Canada have participated in other activities in the WESCOM area. That history changes how we should understand the new center. It is not arriving in an information vacuum. The Philippines already has ships watching the sea, aircraft monitoring activity, military and civilian agencies collecting reports, and cooperation with foreign partners aimed at improving maritime awareness. Now another layer is being added. The fishermen. That may sound insignificant until you consider the geography. Government vessels cannot be everywhere at the same time. Aircraft cannot remain overhead indefinitely. Satellites can observe enormous areas, but they cannot automatically explain every vessel that appears in the water. Fishermen, however, are already out there every day. They see ships. They see fishing activity. They see unusual movements. They encounter other vessels. And now there is a dedicated system through which some of those observations can reach Philippine authorities. That is the strategic idea hiding underneath the fisheries project. The system is remarkably simple. A fisherman sees something unusual. He reports it. The information is transmitted. Authorities receive it. They verify it. And, if necessary, they respond. Fishright describes the broader initiative as empowering fishermen as trusted observers at sea while improving reporting and access to information. But we need to be precise about what this does not mean. It does not turn Filipino fishermen into military intelligence officers. It does not mean every fishing report becomes classified military information. And it does not prove that the United States is building a covert surveillance network through civilian fishermen. The stronger and more defensible point is much simpler. The Philippines is adding civilian observations to its existing maritime awareness architecture. That creates a layered system. Satellites provide one view. Radar provides another. Aircraft provide another. Ships and Coast Guard vessels provide another. And fishermen can provide observations from places where government platforms may not be present. One report might be insignificant. Thousands of reports connected to other sources can become something very different. That is why information is becoming such an important part of the South China Sea competition. This is where the story becomes much more interesting. The new center does not have to be a military facility to have strategic value. Its value can come from what happens after information enters the system. Suppose a fisherman reports a suspicious vessel. Philippine authorities can compare that report with other maritime information. Was the vessel previously observed? Where did it come from? Has it been operating in the same area? Was it involved in another incident? Does its reported activity match what authorities are seeing through other sources? The more connected the system becomes, the easier it becomes to move from simply seeing something to understanding what that thing means. That creates a strategic chain: detection, documentation, verification, response. And that chain matters enormously in the gray zone. Because gray zone competition is often about events that are too ambiguous for an immediate military response, but too important to ignore. A suspicious fishing vessel. An unusual maritime movement. A disputed encounter. A law enforcement confrontation. A vessel operating where Manila believes it should not be. The ability to document those events quickly can give the Philippines something extremely valuable: evidence. Now we can understand the Chinese reaction. Beijing has repeatedly criticized what it sees as growing U.S. involvement in South China Sea disputes, while Washington and Manila have spent years expanding cooperation on maritime domain awareness, information sharing, maritime security, and illegal fishing. Their bilateral discussions have explicitly included stronger maritime operational cooperation and efforts to improve capabilities against illegal fishing. So Beijing does not necessarily need to believe that the new reporting center itself is a military facility. It can simply look at the larger trend. A C2 fusion center already exists in the area. Unmanned systems are being introduced. Maritime information sharing is expanding. Allied exercises are occurring. And now civilian fishermen are being connected to a digital reporting system. That is a much bigger picture than one fisheries project. The most careful interpretation is therefore this: China appears sensitive to the cumulative expansion of U.S. Philippine cooperation that improves Manila's ability to observe, document, and respond to maritime activity. And that is why a civilian initiative can suddenly become a geopolitical issue. For years, the South China Sea story was usually told through hardware. Who has more warships? Who has more missiles? Who has more aircraft? Who controls which reef? But increasingly, another competition is happening underneath the military one. Who sees first? who knows what is happening? Who can prove it? Who can respond fastest? That changes the strategic equation. A country does not necessarily need to fire a missile to gain an advantage. If it can detect suspicious activity earlier, identify the vessel involved, document what happened, verify the information, and respond before the situation escalates, it has already gained an important form of power. This is why the Philippine-American emphasis on maritime domain awareness matters. The objective is not simply to collect information for the sake of collecting it. The objective is to turn scattered observations into usable knowledge. And the new Palawan Center fits neatly into that model. Palawan is particularly useful for this approach because of its position. It faces the South China Sea. It hosts WESCOM. It contains Antonio Bautista Air Base. It already has U.S. Philippine information sharing infrastructure. And it has hosted maritime activities involving several countries. Now add civilian maritime reporting. The result is not one giant military system. It is a collection of different capabilities operating in the same geographic environment. That distinction matters because it prevents us from exaggerating what the new center actually is. The center is civilian. The purpose is fisheries reporting. But the information it generates can still contribute to a broader understanding of what is happening at sea. And that is precisely why this type of initiative could become increasingly important in the future. The most important maritime confrontations are not always the dramatic ones. Sometimes the strategic competition is happening between the incidents. A vessel appears. Someone reports it. Authorities investigate. The event is documented. The information is shared. A decision is made. Then the process happens again. Over time, those small events create a much clearer picture of the maritime environment. And this matters because the West Philippine Sea is not a place where Manila can afford to know only what happens during major confrontations. It needs to understand ordinary activity as well. Who is fishing? Where are they fishing? Which vessels repeatedly appear? What unusual activity is being reported? Where are patterns developing? The new reporting center potentially gives Manila another way to answer those questions. And the more information Manila has, the harder it becomes for ambiguous activity to remain completely invisible. There is a paradox here. The Philippines wants better maritime awareness because it wants to protect its fishermen, enforce its laws, and understand what is happening in its surrounding waters. But the more effective that information network becomes, the more closely China may watch it. If Manila expands civilian reporting centers along its western coastline, Beijing may see that as another sign of growing U.S. Philippine strategic coordination. If those systems become increasingly connected to broader maritime security infrastructure, the political sensitivity could increase even further. And this creates the central dilemma: how can Manila improve its ability to see what is happening at sea without turning every improvement in maritime awareness into another source of escalation? That is the balance the Philippines now has to manage. It cannot simply stop collecting information because Beijing objects, but it also has an interest in keeping civilian maritime initiatives clearly civilian, Philippine-led, and focused on legitimate enforcement objectives. That distinction could become increasingly important. The first possibility is quiet expansion. The Palawan model could spread to other coastal communities, creating more reporting centers and giving more fishermen access to digital systems that allow them to report unusual activity. Over time, this could create a much denser network of civilian maritime observers along the Philippine coastline. The second possibility is greater Chinese pressure. If Beijing increasingly interprets U.S.-supported Philippine maritime initiatives as part of a broader strategic competition, Chinese diplomatic objections could become more frequent, particularly if similar systems are established in areas that China considers strategically sensitive. The third possibility is managed competition. Manila continues improving maritime awareness, but maintains clear boundaries between civilian reporting, law enforcement, and military operations, ensuring that the system remains Philippine-led while still benefiting from U.S. technology and cooperation. That third path may offer Manila the greatest flexibility, because it allows the Philippines to become harder to surprise without deliberately presenting every new capability as a military escalation. And this is why the August 18 Chinese warning deserves attention. The immediate subject was a community center for reporting illegal fishing. But the strategic issue is much broader. The Philippines is gradually building an information architecture around its maritime environment. Fishermen can report. Digital systems can transmit. Government agencies can verify. Coast Guard and maritime authorities can respond. Existing surveillance systems can provide additional context. And international partners can support the technology and capacity needed to make the system work. That does not suddenly change the military balance in the South China Sea. But it changes something that may matter just as much in gray zone competition: visibility. The side that sees more can react earlier. The side that documents more can build a stronger factual record. The side that verifies information faster can respond with greater confidence. And the side that understands the maritime environment better is less likely to be surprised. That is the real significance of what is happening in Palawan. So why did Beijing react to a project designed to combat illegal fishing? Because the building itself may not be the important part. The important part is what the building represents. A gradual shift toward a Philippine maritime environment in which more activity is observed, more incidents are reported, more information is shared, and more events can be independently documented. The new center is only one component of that process. The broader architecture includes WESCOM, existing maritime awareness capabilities, information sharing arrangements, unmanned systems, and cooperation between Manila and Washington. And if that architecture continues expanding, the West Philippine Sea could increasingly become a competition not only over ships and territory, but over information dominance. Who sees first? Who understands first? Who documents first? And who can respond before an incident becomes a crisis? That is the real strategic question. Because in the gray zone, the most important advantage may not belong to the side with the biggest weapon. It may belong to the side that knows it does. And that is why a small civilian reporting center in Palawan has suddenly attracted China's attention.